within Wi-Fi range of the district and were accidentally being affected by these tools while they were at home, and it was causing havoc when it came to learning because the teacher didn't realize that they had control over their students and it was causing filtering problems. So we ended up having to disable it. And while we're in the hybrid model, essentially because of this, there's no way to turn it back on without enabling it for both in school and out of school use. So Information Services and Teaching and Learning presented a proposal to the cabinet to go ahead and enable these for both offsite and on-site use. They approved, and we are currently waiting for a official announcement to come out to the entire district, and I believe a letter to go out to parents via email so that they are aware that we're able to monitor their students' activity at home. But that actually helps segue nicely into what the Securely Classroom tools are. So the Securely Classroom tools are a Chrome extension indicating it only works on Chromebooks and only district issued Chromebooks. So iPads, this will not work for. And for personal devices such as phones, this will not work for. I do not know the official stance on how to mandate that the student use their district issued Chromebook, but those are the only devices these tools will be usable on. These tools are meant for you to directly and indirectly guide and monitor student activity while they're at home or in class. You'll be able to do things like audit their time spent on certain websites, restrict them to certain sites, open sites on their device for them, observe their current activity. I think I mentioned already auditing their previous activity and making records in the event that you need to for the purpose of praise or discipline. But it looks like we've got just about everybody who was going to be here. So we'll go ahead and get started with the screen share here. Let me just get logged out. Okay, and then before we continue, after I get the screen share started, so we're not sharing the link with anyone just yet. The reason for that is because we have not synced Canvas. None of you have an effectively working classroom. And as of right now, none of the actual student Chromebooks have the extension installed. So even if we let you into the console, you'd be effectively able to do nothing. And we would rather you guys actually get to pay attention to the training rather than focusing on the console itself. That way we can try to disseminate as much information as possible. And then when you get to actually get your hands on it next week, you'll get to play. If you feel like you're better off interacting while you learn with it, you'll get a chance after it gets turned on. The session, I believe, is being recorded in addition to the last 2 sessions. And we've already provided Celia and Tony with an asynchronous YouTube playlist from the Securely company on how to use the classroom tools. So if you feel at any time you need to review, you'll have a plethora of resources to do so. But let's go ahead and get started and move into the device console itself. So when you eventually get the link, I do not believe this is going to change at all. We're going to continue signing in with Google. So those of you who did get a chance to use it before we went into distance learning, this is going to be the same. So instead of a username and password, we're going to choose the sign in with Google button. It's going to ask you to choose from a list of emails you've used in this browser. In this case, I'm going to choose my district one, and the login process will be automatic. The device console will then load, and we're going to focus in the location section here. During your day-to-day usage, 99% or so of your time will be spent in teacher tools. But for now, we're actually going to start in web links and classes because we've learned in previous previous demonstrations that the web links and classes will become much more interesting before the other tools. So let's go ahead and get those out of the way first. We can go ahead and start with the web links. Now, a web link is effectively just an object that you name and contains a URL. This gets used for a few different purposes, both for forcibly opening websites on student Chromebooks or for locking them into specific websites on student Chromebooks. Your web links are effectively just a record you can reference later. They're very easy to create, but I would strongly encourage you to make them before your class actually starts. To make them, we click on the web links section in the lower left under location. We click create, this little plus symbol right here. It'll ask us to give it a name. Let's pick a name. Let's call this ABC. And for the website, rather than hand typing it in, I always recommend to avoid mistakes and accidentally sending your entire class to a mislabeled website. Navigate to the site you want to go to first in another tab. And when that site is done loading and the URL is done changing, go ahead and make a copy of it. And then we will go back to our device console tab. And under this URL section, just paste it in there. I find the description to be redundant because for me, the name is always sufficient. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. And I forgot to point out before, we had 16 web links. We now have 17. And if I look closely at the very top here, you can see ABC has been added to my list. If you decide you no longer need a web link and you would like to declutter a little bit and reduce your number, you can check the box next to your web link. This will allow you to delete it. There is a function for cloning other people's web links. I strongly recommend you avoid it. It's more likely to cause you problems than solutions. As we just demonstrated, creating a web link, once you're used to it, takes less than a few seconds. The last button we have for the creation of web links, or in this case, collections of web links, is the Create Collection button. This is effectively just a shortcut to group several web links together. I'll actually go down to this example collection before I create one. If I click this example collection, you can see I have 3 different web links in here. Since I already have this collection, I don't have to create it, but I want to start with creating before I add any. So let's go ahead and create a collection. To do that, we grab any 3 web links that we've already predefined. I'm going to pick 4 in this case. You can choose any number. We'll hit create collection. You have to name it. Test collection is fine. Description, we'll say not needed. Then we'll click create. And you can see our test collection here. If we click the test collection, you can see all 4 of our websites. If you decide you no longer need a website in this collection, and again, I'll be demonstrating how collections are useful in a few moments, check the box next to one of those sites and you can choose to remove it. If you decide you need to add a web link to your collection, we will go ahead and click the add button. And then when the pop-up page loads, we pick a web link from our list. In this case, we'll choose vocabulary, and we can click the add button in the lower left. Now, just to review, Weblink Collections are not a collection of your web links. They are just a small group of the web links you've made, so that instead of individually selecting websites to assign to students, you can use the entire collection at once. It's essentially a shortcut to save you on clicks. Now, the last thing under this web links tab that we want to cover, by default, I believe this box is checked. But in case it's not, as soon as the web links tab loads, you're going to want to check it. If it is unchecked for you by default, this one here that says my web links only, you will see every web link made by every teacher. Now, Securely thought it'd be a great idea for you guys to be able to cooperatively share web links. Frankly, it ends up just leading to multiple duplicates of the same site, and some of which have slight variations, which can become mildly infuriating for your own use. I strongly recommend you don't use your colleagues' websites. Instead, check this box and restrict yourself only to the ones that you've created, because you know for sure the quality of your web links versus another one that you found from a colleague. Now, if you need to find one of your web links because you've created such an enormous list, you can actually search by typing into this box here. So I'll type in the word news, press enter, and we can see that the site Newsella opened here under the name Newsella. I'm the owner with the URL of newsella.com. To get rid of your filtered search, we delete everything in that box, press enter, and it goes back to the default list. Now, the only other tab we need to focus on in web links is this custom block list. This custom block list applies at the start of every classroom session, which you're going to get to see in a few moments. The list of websites in here from the start of your classroom session until the end of it become inaccessible to your students. So for those of you who have been lamenting The never-ending use of cool math games on Chromebooks during English class or any other time period of the day are probably going to rejoice at the ability of being able to restrict your students from using it, or any other website you find that they waste their time on. To add sites to your custom block list, we click the add button here with the little plus symbol. We enter our URL. I'm going to not enter anything for this demonstration. You can add a note if needed, and then we would click save. If you need to remove a site from your block list, in this case, I should probably take Clever off. I'm going to put a checkbox next to it, but you can also uncheck other sites and then click delete. That will remove it from your web links, or sorry, from your custom block list. This button called add from recently closed, we will actually revisit this one in a moment. Or sorry, not in a moment. This one we'll revisit towards the end of the training. There's a feature that compounds with one of the securely device view features with it. Moving on to the classes section, here we have several tabs. Unfortunately, since we haven't integrated with Canvas just yet, the tab for Canvas is missing. So I am just going to use the Google Classroom Classes tab. And since I'm an organization admin, I can see every single classroom that was created or synchronized with Google Classroom. So I have to do a search to find mine, but you guys should only have a small list here. So I'm gonna do a search. Press enter, and 3 test classrooms show up. I'm gonna focus on test classroom 3 for now, because I haven't modified this one yet. When clicking it, I am presented with a large list of options. Here we can see that we have the ability to automatically schedule classes to start. This allows you to pick the date and time that the class you have selected will start every time it meets the schedule criteria. I'm going to go ahead and check this. And let's say, since we're in elementary school class, we're meeting with our class every single weekday. So I'm going to check all 5 days, and we can specify a start time below. We want to choose, I'm going to say 8 a.m. I think that's about when a lot of the elementary start. And we're going to want to run this until 2:30. So we're going to add 360 again. We'll just say 6 hours. So 360 minutes is how long we want to run it for. Okay. This means we can have a classroom session start automatically for us and run throughout the entire school day. Do we have any questions in the Q&A so far that would be relevant to this before I move on?
Yeah, we're getting them answered. Pretty much just there were some questions about time frame, where if they block sites, if then the student wants to browse them later at night, how that works. So
yeah, let me go ahead and actually answer that one for the group. You guys actually only have control over the students during school hours. That hasn't been finalized yet, but it looks like it's going to be from between the times of 6:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And your block list only applies while classroom sessions are active. So if you were to stop your classroom session, or if it automatically stops at 2:30 every day, after 2:30, their Chromebooks will behave normally. Okay, so below the scheduling options are our class options. So at the start of each class, we are going to want to enforce our custom block list. This is up to you. You don't actually have to create one, nor do you have to enforce it. I'm going to strongly recommend that you do not enforce the organization block list. We don't use the organization block list. If anything, it's just going to cause trouble and confusion. Just go ahead and uncheck that one. Below that, we have the option to close all tabs when class starts. I am not a fan of this. Frankly, I find all it does is jar the students and close any relevant work that they have open. It very rarely works to any kind of productive advantage. But if you find a use for it and you decide you want it, you can check this box so that at the start of every class, so 8 a.m., all of the tabs the students have open will be forcibly closed. You do have the option to give them a warning, and they'll have 10 seconds to save their work. I would also recommend expanding that to a minute or two in case they're actually doing something important. Here we go. Below that, we have the ability to limit the number of tabs they have. Generally, this is not a great way to force them to stay on task. If you know for sure during your classroom session, they're only going to be opening one or two tabs because the students are only supposed to be working on two things at once. For example, if they're doing a research paper in the 6th grade and you want them to be able to get to the Google search page and Google Docs and you don't want them deviating from that, you can limit them to two tabs. But that becomes pretty hard to work on if they're trying to spread their work out. I could see a use case for this with some of the younger students who accidentally open many tabs and end up slowing down their device. You could try and limit them to 5. The only other practical use for this is when I show you the teacher tools and you're getting a preview of all the tabs the students have open. This will reduce the number that you have to read as you go over each of the students. But I generally would recommend leaving this at unlimited and let the kids self-manage unless they're very young and can't do that. Our last 3 check boxes have to do with interactivity between the teachers and students. We'll actually spend a little more time on this than we did in our last session. One of the teachers pointed out that we don't need Zoom to be active for you to be able to remote control the Chromebooks. So while you may be giving the kids free time outside of the Zoom session to get their work done so that you can meet up with them later, you can keep an eye on their activity. And in case they need to get a hold of you, aside from via email, you do have the ability to let students use a raise hand function, which will effectively play a sound on your computer and then highlight their screen among all of their peers from the perspective of your class view. And then you have the option to allow students to initiate a chat with the teacher. And finally, the ability to play a chat alert sound on student devices if you choose to send them a message. I am going to check all 3 of these and leave them on by default. In the event that some kids try to abuse this and they're all choosing to raise their hand all day, every day, you can leave this feature disabled to take that away from them. So now that we have our default class scheduling set up and our default settings set up, we can click save. And now at 8 a.m. for the next 6 hours every day, IS Test Classroom 3 is going to start and stop automatically. You actually do not have to be logged in for that to take effect. We'll demonstrate that in a moment. But now that we're done here, we can move on to the teacher tools where the real meat and potatoes of the software actually is. So here in the teacher tools section, we have a list of classes in a drop-down. And again, since I can see all of the classes, this list is far more expansive than it would be for you. So I need to actually perform a search to find my class. Okay, so here's IS Test Classroom 1. I'm going to choose that class, and I actually left it running. This is the view that you would see in the event that you hopped into your class at 8:30 and kids were already using their Chromebook. Because you had it scheduled to start at 8, their Chromebooks already were under control of your default classroom settings. And as soon as you get logged in and choose the correct class, you can already see what they're doing. We're going to cover how these display pop-ups work in a moment, or in a little few minutes, hopefully. Before we do that, though, I mentioned that we have to send a letter out to the parents to inform them that we have the ability to monitor their Chromebooks. The students will be reminded of this every time that we, every time we start and stop a class session. Tommy, can I have you go ahead and spotlight your screen real quick so that they can see the notification up here?
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and stop this class manually with this orange button right now. And on Tommy's screen and the other Chromebook I have next to me, you can see in the lower right of their screen, they have—
Oh, one sec, Corey. Just for everyone in attendance, if you go up to the top right of your screen and select the view option, make sure you have side-by-side speaker selected, and that will show Corey's screen and my Chromebook screen next to each other, so you can follow along more easily.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to go ahead and restart this class with the little green button here. This will manually initiate a classroom session. Let's go ahead and click start. Now, these options are going to look really familiar. They're effectively all the same classroom session settings that we had just picked in the automated section, except the only real changes are the start time is changed to whatever the current time is, And then the length of the class time can be specified in minutes, or you can choose the end time manually. In this case, we're going to go ahead and choose to stop this class at 1:30. Here we go, PM. And we've already covered the other settings down below. If you feel like I've gone too fast, though, feel free to go ahead and review the video after. For the sake of brevity, we're just going to go ahead and proceed. Okay, so our class session has restarted. Tommy has now gotten a notification that he is potentially being monitored by a teacher, and he sees that in the lower right of his screen, and he's pulling it back up for you to see again. And a question we got from the last session was, what if a student logs out or is not already logged in at the start of a classroom session? That is a good question, because the student will automatically join this session as soon as they get logged in, or within a few moments after. Once the Chrome extension loads, it goes and checks to confirm that it is or is not currently in a scheduled or non-scheduled classroom session. So after the student logs in, they will actually see that little pop-up appear. Now, since we started this class session manually, you can see that we have a countdown timer indicating when it will end, indicating when we will lose control of these Chromebooks. We can stop it at any time, like I demonstrated earlier with this orange stop button. But if we decide that we need a little bit of extra time, this green button here that says plus 5 minutes will actually add 5 minutes to our counter. And clicking it multiple times will actually increase it by increments of 5 minutes. So if you ever feel like you're just a little bit short and you don't want to start your class session all over again, you can just extend it slightly. Let's go ahead and cover a feature that I think Amy brought up before this started. We can see the student screens here. This is effectively a preview of the tabs that the student have open. I want to emphasize it is specifically of the tab in the Google Chrome browser. It is not of the entire screen. If you compare my screen, and I'll get to how to do what I'm showing you in a moment, to what we see on Tommy's screen, Tommy is showing you the complete web browser, or sorry, the complete interface of the Chromebook as a student would see it if they were sitting in front of it. I am only seeing the tab he is actively using, which means that if Tommy were to have the browser minimized, I would not even know, and I'm not able to help him if I need to see buttons outside of this page. But if you were actually trying to assist a student with instruction who's confused on what buttons to click where, this will at least give you a preview of the site that they have open. Tommy, can I have you scroll up and down for a few seconds so I can show them something else too? So if you're watching Tommy's screen live, you'll see that you can very quickly or very fluidly see his screen going up and down. In the device preview, that's good enough, Tommy. In the device preview, you can see that Tommy's video feed appeared very slow and choppy. That's because it's actually not a live feed. This is what Securely calls their popcorn view. Effectively, every 5 to 7 seconds, every Chromebook in your class takes a screenshot and then sends it to the teacher console of their active tab. So that although it's not an exact live preview, if you were to interact with a student one-on-one, or you were attempting to show off their work, like let's say you were connected to a projector and you wanted to let all of the students in the class see what that particular student had been doing correctly on a particular problem, you can enlarge their screen for everyone to see, but it's very bad for animated things. Oh, sounds like we're losing some snow. Let's go ahead and hit back. Okay. And you'll notice that these screens don't necessarily refresh in any type of order. That kind of goes back to Securely's name called the popcorn view. These screens will refresh at random intervals in random places. So if I had 30 up here, they would effectively be popping up with new screenshots, like pieces of popcorn popping at random. All right, let's go ahead and transition into a different view. So right now we are in what's called the screens view, or the screens view. And I want to switch to something called the list view. Now, keep an eye on these 4 buttons that we're going to cover in a little bit later. When I click this button here, next to the view section, we're going to switch from seeing their screens to instead seeing a list of their open tabs. Those 4 buttons I mentioned that we're going to cover in a little bit have been moved to the top section of each student's, we'll call it a representative rectangle here. And in this little rectangle, I can see each tab that each student has open, or at least the 4 most recently used one. These are listed in order of most to least recently used in descending order from top to bottom. I can see exactly which tab they used and in what order. Now, something to take a note of, if you're watching Tommy and he's fooling around with the app drawer, Tommy, go ahead and open that. Again, this view for their screen and this view for their open tabs does not include anything outside the browser. So if Tommy is fiddling around with the calculator or the camera, we won't know about it per se, unless we see that he's been particularly inactive for a while now. But you can definitely see that even though it thinks Tommy still has his essay open, which he technically does, he is using another computer right now. And I believe he opened up the iStation app, which I did not know we even had on the Chromebook still. But essentially, Android apps on the Chromebooks will not be detected by the securely Chrome tools because it only has access to the browser. Tommy, can you switch back to the browser for me? I want to move on to the trash can.
I just have to figure out how to get out of iStation.
Okay, there we go. So we can see Tommy has a few different tabs open right now. I can see he has his essay open, and that's good, meaning he's on task. But let's say he's in a time, or he's at a point in the class where I would prefer him not having YouTube on in the background. I can make a subtle correction to his behavior by going to the YouTube tab here and then clicking this little trash can icon. Doing this, if you watch Tommy's screen, you'll see the YouTube tab disappear almost instantly when I click it now. And there goes YouTube. So this is a great way to gently encourage kids to stay on task for their classroom session. But we have more aggressive methods for forcing them to stay on task as well. We're going to go ahead and move into the 6 tools in the top section of the class here. Give me one moment. I am very parched. Okay, sorry about that. So we have 6 tools here: Screen Lock, Sitelock, Release, Push URL, Announce, and Share Screen. We're going to start with Screen Lock and then move on a little asynchronously based on what I think makes the most sense. So we'll start with our Screen Lock. When I click this button, the very first thing I'm presented with is a question of, do I want to apply this Screen Lock to all devices? I'm going to click No for now. The reason being is I want to demonstrate that we can actually individually apply this to students instead. So if I were to click on any of our students' screens, I'm going to choose Tommy's here for an example. In the lower left of his screen, you can see that I have a green circle with a white check mark indicating he's going to be the only one affected by whatever command I use next. So this time, if I choose Screen Lock, it will not ask me about applying it to the entire class. Instead, it proceeds to the second question, which is essentially what message do we want to appear on their screen. I'm going to cancel this again because I would actually rather show it on the entire class. So let's say you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting with your students and you want to guarantee that they're actually paying attention to you speak in the Zoom meeting and they're not able to do any goofing off in the web browser itself. I'm going to choose to do a screen lock on all their devices. I'm going to click yes to applying it to all devices in the class. I'm going to customize the message and we can put in here, you should be watching your teacher in the Zoom meeting now. And since Securely only has access to the web browser, it's actually not going to affect the Zoom call. Tommy, can you open up the Zoom app and then just show it off for a moment? So you can see Zoom can be open while they're unable to use the browser entirely. You can close it now, Tommy. And since I've started a screen lock on all of their devices, you can see our two students here have a orange circle with a white padlock next to them. This is meant to remind you that you have left their screens, quote unquote, locked. Now, calling it a screen lock is a little deceptive. At the time when this was originally developed, Chrome was about the only application you could run in the browser. And because of that, the students were effectively trapped into getting to use nothing on the device. So it was effectively like locking out their entire screen. Those of you who have used LAN School are probably familiar with the screen lock function that truly did cover the entire screen. However, if you look at Tommy's display, he can still get to the buttons for signing out. And at the bottom bar, he could open other apps. Web apps like YouTube will not work. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. Tommy, can you open up a new tab and show them what happens? Oh, in this case, he's browsing the files, but let's go ahead and open a website. So when a new site opens, YouTube doesn't work. Well, actually, yeah, it does for this. I'm thinking of the web.
I always forget that it never finishes loading.
It doesn't for the Sitelock, but we'll get to that in a moment. So here we can see that the site has been blocked by our administrator. I don't think that's the message I left. I must have accidentally cleared it. So when Tommy's site finishes loading, it will actually be overtaken by this gray screen and the message we had put on there before. In this case, he's choosing the district website. And you can see the site actually takes a while to get blocked. On very poorly performing websites that take up to minutes to load, it will sit there and let the student view the site only because Securely does not have access to the site until loading has finished. So the district website, as you saw, took probably close to 10 seconds to finish loading. Yahoo, YouTube, other sites, they'll take a few seconds, but eventually, as soon as they're done loading, the student is effectively locked out of being able to use them and any new tab or any tabs they currently have open. This whole mechanism that I've just described is actually going to apply to several other things in Securely as well. But since we're done with the screen lock, I'm going to go ahead and remove it by clicking this release button right here, the green rectangle or green square with a white padlock on it. We're going to click yes, that we want to release the entire class. I'm going to stop reading this message. So if you see this pop up and me quickly dismiss it, it's only for the sake of moving quickly. This happens every time you choose to run a command. Next, let's go ahead and move on to our push URL. This is where you finally get to see web links in action. So I'm going to say yes, I want to apply to the whole class. And then here is the list of web links that I was showing off earlier. These are my web links, as you can see from the little checkbox here, so only mine will show up. So if I want Tommy to go to one or multiple websites, or the entire class to go to more or one website, I can choose, let's say, open up Newsela and Google Docs. I'll put a checkbox in both of these, and then I will click push URL. And if you watch Tommy's screen, the entire screen or the preview from the teacher console, you'll see two new tabs have opened. And I'll switch to the list view real quick. And you can see that Tommy's gained the Google Docs page and he's gained the Newsela page at the bottom here. And let's say we don't really want Tommy working on his essay right now. We want him to move on to Newsela. He'll have time for that at a later period in class. I'm going to click the trash can, remove his essay, and remind him to get back on task. Okay, let's go ahead and switch back to our screens view here. That way we can get a better view of the next tool. We're going to use the Sitelock next. This also uses our web links that we created earlier and allows us to restrict students to a particular site or sites. When I click this button, again, it asks about the whole class. And in this case, yes, we want to apply it to all of them. Now, the way Sitelock works is we choose from our web links a list of sites that students are allowed to visit, and then all other sites that Securely has access to, which is everything except for a few Google Chrome setup pages, will be blocked. So let's go ahead and choose Docs, Newsella again. And I haven't demonstrated this yet, so let's go ahead and use one of our Weblink collections here. So inside of random websites here, I have several sites. Ideally, you would name this something more pertinent, like research collection, so that you know when you distribute this, every resource that you want the kids to visit, such as a YouTube video, a couple of websites relevant to the subject, and maybe Google Docs are in here. You check this box, and instead of choosing those sites individually from your web links from this long list, all you have to do is find your collection, check it, and then lock them in. Now there's three tabs here at the bottom that we need to focus on. This one right here called Force Close All Tabs is currently really buggy. Supposedly it's getting fixed in the most recent update that's coming out this week. I wouldn't bet on that. And frankly, I would say it's 50-50 on whether or not it's going to be useful to you. If your students are potentially already working on an assignment, all this is going to do is close their work and force them to get back to where they were. Now, if you're trying to assign something brand new that they shouldn't already be working on, this can be useful to forcibly transition them into a different set of websites and simultaneously remove all of the other sites that they have open. So I'm going to leave this one unchecked as it is by default for me, because that's what I've been using. Now, some of you might be asking, if I allow a site by choosing one of these web links, to what level of access do they get to that website? Like, for example, if I send them to research.weebly.com, will they be able to only go there, or can they go to any Weebly site like games.weebly.com? That depends on whether or not you check this box right here. Generally, I would say you'd want this to be checked, because if you're sending them to an educational site, there's a really good chance there's not a whole lot for them to do wrong. If you decide at a later time that it's problematic, you can always uncheck this and it'll restrict exactly what students are able to get to. Down at the bottom, there is an option that says do not open tabs. In a moment here, you're going to see that when I click this Sitelock button, it's going to forcibly open all of the web links that I've selected, including the collection of web links on all of the student screens. I personally consider this a great benefit, because then that forces all of the sites that the students are allowed to use to their forefront. They don't have to guess, they don't have to type in URLs, and then they know for sure exactly where they're allowed to be, and if they try to go anywhere else, they're going to get stopped. So I'm not going to check this box, and I'm actually going to recommend you almost never do. So now that we're ready, we're going to go ahead and click Sitelock, and you'll see that a bunch of new tabs are opening on each of our students. And just like the screen lock, we have an orange globe this time instead of a padlock up here. And this indicates to us at a quick glance that these students are under a site lock. Now in the list view, both the screen lock and site lock indicator appear in the top next to these four buttons that I referenced earlier. They will be in this gray panel next to the student's name. But for the sake of ease of viewing for demonstration, I'm going to stay in the screens view. And if you look carefully at Tommy's screen in particular and his Chromebook, he has a bunch of these tabs open. Tommy, can you go to one of the tabs that was not allowed on the site lock for me? So you can see that Tommy is not able to go to this site, even though he already had it open, securely overrode it, and effectively shut him out of being able to use it. And if you were to open a new tab, which you can go ahead and do now, Tommy, as soon as that site is done loading, he will also be blocked out of it, effectively forcing him to stay on task. Okay, and that's effectively all there is to site locks. We're going to go ahead and release them with the release button again. But let's say you only wanted to release one or two or half of your students because you're alternating what their tasks are. Maybe they're working in different groups. I'm going to go ahead and click the checkbox on Tommy's screen, hit release, and you can see the little orange globe is going to be removed from his screen, and eventually he's going to get access to all of his websites back. I believe, yep, there we go. I can see it refreshing in his live view. And in a moment here, his popcorn view on my screen will update. Google Classroom is loading. And here we can see on test student number 3, the web lock or site lock is still active. So if I go to another tab, think that was one of our videos. Apex. I only have allowed sites here. Let's visit a new one. There we go. This student is still restricted by our Weblink or Sitelock, sorry. Let's go ahead and release all of the other students now. Yes, I would like to apply it to everyone. And now all of our students can browse the web like they would normally, aside from anything that's in our custom block list. Let's actually demonstrate the custom block list real quick. So if we take a look at my web links and then go to the custom block list tab, we can see that Cool Math Games is one of those sites that I have blocked. Tommy, can you try and open up Cool Math Games and show them what happens? He is forever restricted from entering the Cool Math Games website for as long as my classroom sessions are active, because it is permanently in my custom block list. At any time, as I mentioned before, you can remove it, but it's a great way to ensure that kids are not traveling off task. Let's say you don't know every website that the students are going to, but you know that you want to make sure that they aren't visiting ones, or you want to stop them from visiting distracting websites in the future. You can actually, after closing the sites that you deem inappropriate with the little trash can here in our list view, if we go back to the web links again on the left hand side, custom block list, I mentioned we would revisit this button here, add from recently closed. When I do that, you can see a list of all of the sites that I recently closed off, and in there includes Google Docs, the U46 website. YouTube was the one I most recently had done. If I were to check this box or any multiple of these boxes and click add, those sites are now added to my custom block list. So you don't have to go and memorize every URL the kids go to that you don't like. At the end of every classroom day, after you're done banishing away those tabs with the trash button, you can just go to add from recently closed, find anything you don't like for the day, and add it to your permanently custom blocked list. All right, let's go back into our teacher tools. We have two more classroom-wide tools to cover, announce and share screen. We're gonna go ahead and do announce first, and to demonstrate it easier, we'll stay in the screen the view mode. Tommy, you can go ahead and go back to your essay or something that we can override more easily. So for announce, when I click this button, again, it asks about the whole class. This time we have to customize the message. This one is great for making sure students have confirmed that they read your message. Let's go ahead and put one in here. You have 5 minutes to turn in your assignment for full credit. I click announce. And as you'll see in my popcorn view and on Tommy's screen, a pop-up with a white overlay that covers the website the student was already on appears. Tommy, go ahead and show them what happens when you try to go to a new tab. Once again, it overrides every new tab so that they have to, absolutely must click OK before proceeding. This is great if you have one student who got up for a bathroom break in the middle of instruction. You wanted to make sure everyone got this information because they have to click OK before they can get out of that. They can no longer tell you, I didn't see what you told me to do, I didn't hear, I didn't know. That doesn't apply anymore. They have to click OK. And our final tool is the share screen. This can be useful when you're working one-on-one with students, especially if you're outside of a Zoom call. Let's say you finished your Zoom call for the day, but you're working one-on-one, maybe in a tutoring session with a student or trying to help them figure out how to do something on their Chromebook. If you want to demonstrate to them, unfortunately, this doesn't go both ways, but we're going to get several pop-ups when we click this. I'm going to choose to do share screen. It'll ask if we want to share for all students. In this case, I'm going to actually hit no. We're going to share with just Tommy. We'll hit, and since we've already selected Tommy, it's asking us about the second option, which is, would you like to lock students to the tab with your screen sharing session? If you choose no, they will be able to browse other tabs. I'm going to choose no this time. Hit screen, choose a screen for them to look at, and then hit share. And if you watch Tommy's screen and the popcorn view, a new tab is forcibly opened with a video feed directly from my my second screen here that Tommy can view. Now, I didn't restrict Tommy from leaving this page, so he can actually continue to attempt to work while you're demonstrating things to him. I'm going to go ahead and stop screen share. And as one of our most requested features, for those of you who have really oddly shaped classrooms or very long classrooms with a display at a far end that students have trouble seeing, if you want to convey information to them visually off of your computer and a display and throughout the whole class is not cutting it, the share screen option will actually, hang on, let me deselect Tommy. The share screen option will actually let you choose to select all students. And in this case, I am going to lock them into that tab where they have to watch what I'm doing. This again guarantees that they aren't browsing any other websites while they're, they aren't browsing any other websites while I'm trying to demonstrate to them from my screen. Tommy, go ahead and show them what happens if you go to another tab while this is open. There you go. They can't get to any other website in any kind of useful manner. And then once I'm done broadcasting whatever I needed for them to see, I can hit stop screen share on my screen and they will all be released. All right, any relevant questions before we move on outside of the classroom-wide tools?
There was one about if building admins would be giving access.
That is a no at this time. Right now, it is dependent on who is designated as a teacher in Canvas. And actually, since this got asked earlier, will parapros have access? I don't know if they're given access in Canvas, but theoretically, if they were, the teacher tools do, the classroom tools do actually support having multiple simultaneous teachers in the same class. If for whatever reason, though, let's say a student were to be taken by an interventionist outside of class and your session normally runs for 6 hours, when the interventionist starts a separate class session, they will actually remove the student from your class and add them to theirs. The most recent teacher is the one who takes control of the student. So hopefully that answers those potential future questions. Let's go ahead and move on to the 4 buttons that I've been avoiding next to each student. So these buttons here are specific to each student and apply only to them instead of the whole class. We'll start going from right or left to right. This first one here is shaped like a thumbtack. It's called pin to top. Now, normally in a classroom view, you'd have a grid of maybe 4 or 5 by 6 down, up to 30 kids. And not all of the kids in here need as much attention as the others. I have a saying that all the kids in the back will get pinned to the top. So if the more rambunctious kids or the kids who are struggling the most and require you to keep an eye on them, if you want to make sure that they're in the most visible area of your screen and not hidden underneath the bottom of the web page while you're scrolling, click the pin to top button. That thumbtack will turn green, and that student will be moved out of alphabetical order and then moved to the upper left of your student list, guaranteeing they're much more likely to be seen while you're moving around or observing the students, because we generally tend to start reading in the upper left first. Now you can pin multiple students. In this case, we're just going to leave Tommy, but the most recently pinned goes to the uppermost left. So we're going to go ahead and leave Tommy pinned, and then we'll move on to our next section, our next button here. So I briefly mentioned at the beginning that you can interact with the students via chat and hand raising. So let's say you've given them a break to get some work done and you're no longer in a Zoom call, but you need to communicate with them and you don't want to start a separate Zoom call for something very minor. We can open up a chat with the students by clicking this button here. And here we can see our entire class roster on the left. Students who are missing are orange or amber. Students who are present are marked with a green circle. When I have a student selected, I can see a preview of their screen still, and I can send them a message. We'll send Tommy a hello. And if you watch his live view, you can see a pop-up, just that blue circle appear here with the chat logo. If he were to click that, he'll see my chat message and he'll be able to respond to me. Okay. And then Tommy, can I have you send another message to me? Let's see if it shows up. Typically when a message, there we go. I just received a ding on my end informing me that a student messaged me. And we can see next to Tommy's screen here that there is a glowing aura around the chat button here, indicating he has sent me a message. There we go. And then Tommy, can you demonstrate for them how a student would initiate a chat? In the upper right of the screen for the, upper right of their screen, there's a Chrome extension icon for the Securely Classroom. When Tommy clicks it, because I left it enabled, he should have the ability to raise his hand and initiate a chat with the teacher. So he can do either. And then Tommy, go ahead and do a hand raise for us. So let's say we're no longer in a Zoom call, but the kids are working on something that might be relevant to your class. I can see that I got the same kind of notification I did before. I can come check on Tommy. No, you may not. There, you cannot use the bathroom now. You are forever banned.
I have a feeling that would happen. Hand raise is disabled currently.
Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and let's stop our class session and start it over again. Okay, and there's Tommy getting the notification. We'll manually start the class, allow hand raising with this checkbox right here. Click start. Go ahead and do the hand raise again. There we go. There we go. So now we can hear a tone on my computer, and we see in the upper right of Tommy's screen, there is a big glowing orange circle with a raised hand. I can go ahead and in a moment here, I'll show you how to actually dismiss that. But first, I want to come up to the history button here. Looks like a little clock inside of a blue rectangle. Now, it behooves us to audit what the kids have been doing when they think we're not paying attention, because it's much more useful to find out now if they're falling behind due to lack of attention rather than find out when it comes time to grade. So if I click on this history button here, oop, I forgot. Tommy, can you browse a few tabs since we just restarted the session? This accidentally leads me to a very important point. You can actually see all of the students' browser history since the classroom session started. However, if you restart the classroom session, that information is wiped away and you're not going to be able to see it, unfortunately. If for whatever reason you need to retain the information, there is an export button right here in the upper right. Clicking this will actually download an Excel CSV file that will retain the information you see here. Let me close it and reopen it though. Tommy, can I maybe go on a site that, like your essay site again? Okay. Oh, wait, yeah, you are number 2, right? Yeah, you are. Interesting. Our view seems to be a little...
I was on that site before you started the class session, so let me refresh.
Okay. Very odd. Okay, we'll call that very strange. Let's see if the other Chromebook is behaving more. Not at all. All right, we appear to have hit a bug in the Chrome tools. Oh, here we go. It's finally loading. So the spreadsheet that gets downloaded contains the same 4 columns that we would normally get in this view. We can see the date and time that Tommy opened a website, the site's the root domain of the site Tommy visited, the title of the tab that he was visiting, and most importantly, perhaps, the time spent. Now, this is not a live update of the time spent. If you would like to continually focus on one student's browsing activity, you can refresh with this button right here, and you'll see we go from a list of 1 through 7 of 7 to, never mind, we're still at 7. I thought you were still browsing around. Well, apparently Securely's having trouble. So we can see that the time did increase for Newsella. There appears to be more of a delay than we would normally get. It's the first time this has actually happened. But we can see that Tommy started off in Google Docs and then was only there for about 12 seconds before moving on to Newsella. This can be great for checking which students are just browsing YouTube the whole time and which are just using YouTube for background noise. For example, if this were YouTube that he spent 12 seconds on, I could be reasonably sure that Tommy opened up YouTube and picked a song he wanted to listen to and is now working in Newsela. Or I could assume vice versa, depending on which which site has more time spent. If you wanted to, for example, go back and audit a student, let's say you're pretty sure you saw them minimize something and then them going back to work while you were circling the classroom, you can come by here and see what websites they had just recently opened and how long they were there for. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close history, and we'll come back to one section of it in a little bit here. Our last and final student-specific button is the device view. Clicking this shows an enlarged version of Tommy's screen right now, and these buttons at the top are very similar to the ones that we saw for the entire class, but they will only apply to this specific Chromebook instead of the entire class. Most of these are the same though, so we're not going to bother covering them. Let's go ahead and move on to specifically just the new ones. So here we have a save screen option. I can see Tommy has been pretty off task, and maybe I want to talk to his parents about it or the principal and see what we can do to get him to focus more while he's in school. Let's go ahead and take a screenshot of Tommy's screen by clicking Save Screen. At the top of the Teacher Tools / Classroom Manager, we can see that it has been successfully saved. To see the screenshot that was saved, we're going to go back into the History section. We can either go there from this device view, or if we are in the class view and we want to look at it later, we can click this History button, or if we are in the list view, we can click this History button. They all go to the exact same place. The tab called Saved Screens will contain the screenshot of Tommy's screen. Now, this doesn't have to just be used for disciplinary purposes. If I were to click this, you can see I have an enlarged version of this page, of the screenshot. I can right-click it, save the image to my computer, or I can copy it and put it in a Google Doc or an email. This is a great way to demonstrate good work that students do as well. For example, if in one earlier part of the day, while you're doing group rotations of some kind, if one group member did something particularly amazing that you wanted the other groups to see later and not have to recreate each time, you could take that screenshot and show them exactly what happened, maybe mark it up on your interactive board or in Zoom. Let's go ahead and go back to our device view. So I mentioned before that these 4 buttons are actually the same ones that appear next to their screens as well. So if I stay in the list view, I can still get to his quote unquote device view with this little eyeball here. And we can go back to his enlarged screen. This is great for demoing the class, as I mentioned earlier. But if you want to go even bigger, these 2 arrows in the lower right of Tommy's screen preview will enlarge it further, almost taking up your entire screen. So if you were connected to a projector and wanted to give a semi-live presentation of what's on Tommy's Chromebook, you don't have to unplug your projector. You don't have to hook them up to your interactive board. You can just show the entire class what your laptop is seeing. This also works very nicely if you're going to use the share screen function with the entire class at the same time. And then the last section of our device view are the tabs, or the tab list that we've already seen before. Again, we can close these individually by clicking the trash icon, subtly indicating to Tommy that we are paying attention to his browsing activity and that we want him to get back to work. All right, to get out of the device view right here, we can either click Teacher Tools to take us back to where we were, or we can click the back button to go back to our entire class view. And that effectively wraps up everything we needed to cover. I believe it's going to be time for Q&A now.
I got 3 marked in there for you.
Okay, let me
so
pull it
far.
up. All right, when you set up a recurring session, do you have to start it, or does it start automatically at the time you assign to start? Good question. We did cover that briefly. It starts automatically whether or not you are signed in. If your class, well, actually here, let's do an example. So right now I have an active class session and it's not going to end for 36 minutes. But let's log out and say that I never attended it because all I really needed was for the block list to apply. I didn't need to join the session myself. If I sign back in as myself and I pick that active class from my drop down, so let's go to teacher tools, pick my class from the drop down, IS test. Again, your list will not be nearly as exhaustive as mine. You can see that the class session actually never stopped running. It still continued, and Tommy was still affected by all of the restrictions I have in place with my block list. So even if your computer reboots, you do not have to worry about the students running wild. Okay, how many students will typically display at once? That depends on several things, like what resolution and zoom level you're running at. Like right now, I am very zoomed in to help you guys see better. But if I were to zoom into a normal amount, you can see I have about 3 students here. I could actually probably fit 5 or 6 on this very large monitor going horizontally. And then I would guess at least 4 going down. This would be a great reason to emphasize the pin or unpin student function. I would highly recommend the students that need the most attention stay pinned like this. If you wanted to zoom out a little bit to fit a few more in there, you can with the control minus key. And especially when they're younger and in elementary school, I find that if you happen to leave this connected to a projector while all of the students are in class, and one of the kids gets off task, they tend to accidentally help you start policing one another. One kid gets scolded for being off task, and all of a sudden he sees someone else in class going to the same website, decides to call him out in front of the teacher. It's a great way to help the kid or have the kids help you. If we split grade level and assign one grade to a video clip to watch on YouTube, how can we activate YouTube for those students but not the others? So if we were going to, well, by activate, you mean just, I'm going to assume you mean just open YouTube. Go ahead and clarify that with me in a moment if you mean that, I mean otherwise. But if you want to select particular students to get access to, or access, sorry, if you want to push a YouTube video to specific students, the best way to do that would be to click their screens individually. Unfortunately, there's not a fantastic way to do 15 out of 30 kids other than by clicking them. And if they are completely out of order based on grade level, I understand that's going to get pretty tedious pretty quick. But unfortunately, Securely doesn't have a way to let you manually rearrange the students into any kind of order. Although now that I say that out loud, I don't see any reason I can't go nag one of their engineers to add that as a feature. Let's see.
So for that first question, Corey, of the reoccurring sessions, if they say they have a class like every day at 9, will it automatically start at 9, or do they still have to manually start it?
Yep, I could never even turn on my computer and all of my scheduled sessions are going to start. I just won't be able to obviously see what the kids are doing, but for example, my custom block list would be enforced starting at 9 o'clock.
Perfect. Thanks.
Do we have any other questions? I'll go ahead and give everyone a couple more minutes to type. And Tommy or Tony, is there anything else you guys can, or anyone, I guess, who attended the other trainings? Anything else you can think of that I missed from the other trainings and want to add here? We seem to have gone much quicker than before.
No, I think I was going to say that like minimizing Chrome, but I think we covered that with iStation where it
yes.
only Chrome is shown.
Yeah, we did do that one incidentally.
And then I see Carolina has a hand raised. So if you do have a question, if you could just throw it in the Q&A box and, oh, never mind.
I think since there's no other questions, I think we're good.
Yeah, I'm okay with calling it early. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Good rest of your day.
I missed the beginning. I apologize if this was covered. I'm a specials teacher. If students are not in class or in Zoom, can I still see their work? Yes, they do not need to be in Zoom. They do not need to be physically on premises for this to work. Even if they are technically sick for the day, if for whatever reason they're playing on their Chromebook while they're sick, you'll actually be able to see that within school hours. But yes, you do not need them to be connected to Zoom. As a matter of fact, it got kind of pointed out in a previous meeting that Zoom, you might not actually actively be using Zoom all day. You may give them instruction in the beginning of the day, give them time to work, and then meet later. But in the meantime, you can keep an eye on all of their activity until the next session starts. You can push they should be in class. Oh, as a matter of fact, yes. And if you really want to make sure they get to your Canvas page, you can actually push a URL to them. So if we go to our web links, I would highly recommend all of you take you can actually do this right now if you sign in. Tommy, if you could go ahead and share the link via chat. And if you don't have it handy, let me know. But if you guys were to sign in now, you can actually start creating your web links if we have some extra time. Click the create button, name it my Canvas link for this class, and then paste your Canvas link in here. And then while you're in the teacher tools, you can say push URL. Yes, we want to apply it to the whole class. And then you pick whatever web link you want. I don't have Canvas in here, but you pick your Canvas page, hit push URL, and now Clever is going to pop up on all of our Chromebooks in my class. So you could effectively do the same thing with Canvas and force them all to start. And yes, you could also combine that with an announcement that they need to start their work. Will it keep track of different pages they visit in Canvas so I will know what they were working on each assignment? Or will it just tell me they were? And unfortunately, it's really going to tell you only that they were on Canvas. I don't know the exact reasoning for this, but if you check the history, they only give you the root domain in the student's browser history. It doesn't tell you exactly what part of Canvas. However, and I don't know to what extent Canvas does this, if you look carefully here under the title section and you check the browsers themselves, like if you look at my browser right here on the CNN tab that we were using earlier, you can see it's titled CNN-breaking news, blah, blah, blah. And theoretically, if Canvas were to do something similar, like my assignment number something goes here, you would actually see that in the title, which might be an indicator of which Canvas page they went to. But aside from that, unfortunately, no, you can't see exactly. I actually thought Canvas would keep track of that, but someone correct me if I'm wrong. Can you push a URL with Kami assignment in Canvas? I'm assuming that means a Kami assignment that's in Canvas. Can you push that URL? Yeah, if it's something that you can send, if it's any kind of link that you could email them in theory, then yes, you can totally create a web link and push it via URL. Since we have some extra time before we close, I'll actually demonstrate an additional feature. I usually skip this just for the sake of brevity and because it's not something I think people commonly use. But if you go to push URL, you may have noticed I always skip this top section here. I believe we had a little bit of trouble with it earlier because it seemed to be a bit buggy. But you can actually push a URL to the student devices without creating a web link and have it go out to their machines and then never worry about it again. If you on the fly wanted to turn it into a web link, you can check this box here. Let's see if it actually works this time though. All right, it appears to have just been a bug before. How does screen share here work with screen share in Zoom? Zoom and this screen share could actually be done simultaneously. You can only share your own screen from within the classroom manager though. It's done using the WebRTC get navigator commands. So you get a little, here, hang on. Yes, we won't share, we'll lock them in, that's fine. So when you choose to share your screen, it actually doesn't even have to be an entire screen. You can choose an application window or a tab in Chrome. But in this case, we'll do entire screen. Then we'll choose the screen that we want to share, click share, and then that will forcibly open up a tab on their Chromebooks where they have to watch what's happening on the second screen or on my second screen.
So they can both work at the same time. Like right now, you're sharing your screen to us in Zoom, but then also sharing your screen to me in Securely.
Yep, they are completely non-conflicting. Heck, if you had two monitors, you could share one with the entire class in Zoom and then the other individually with the student.
So yeah, you don't need either one to do the other one. You could do both at the same time. They're fully independent.
Yep. All right, well, we have like another 10 or so minutes, so if anyone has any last minute questions, now's a great time. I know it takes time to type them, so we'll give you a minute or two to keep typing, but feel free to hop off now if you feel like you're done and you don't need to learn anymore. And the number drops. Here we go. So even if they don't have Chrome open, if you share your screen, it will force open and present that. Yes, that is how it is intended to work. And actually, let's go ahead and do one more demonstration that I don't think you guys will run into very often. So Tommy closed Chrome, and here in place of his screen, we can see that the device is online, but the browser is not set to open. If I click Tommy and get him selected and then do a screen share, I'm going to say, yes, I would like to lock the students into this. I share the screen. It's supposed to open Chrome. I believe it was having trouble doing this with the force close tabs. Tommy, go ahead and open up Chrome for me. See if it's just taking too long. Ooh, we found another bug. All right. I know it doesn't have access to those those pages though. All right. We are going to have a talk with Securely about that because it does not launch the browser like it's supposed to. How do we delete an old class? I'm going to guess you weren't here at the beginning. You actually can't. The classes are from the old Google Classroom sync. They are not going to be removed until we get the Canvas integration done, probably next week. We are currently waiting on a mass email to go out from communications to both parents and staff, at which point your Canvas classes will be synced in place of Google Classroom. I apologize for covering it, of course, it was pushed to all student accounts. No, this will be forcibly installed on all student Chromebooks, emphasizing district issued Chromebooks, not iPads, not phones, only Chromebooks. But it will be forcibly installed without their consent. When will this be available to use? Right now, I don't have a hard date for it, but the plan, as far as I'm aware, is next week. Will you guys make a parent video as well, or are the resources for them already? I believe there is some already from Securely, and there is already an email in the works from communications that's going out to them. I know some parents are going to be kind of weirded out by the message that says we can monitor what their kids are doing. Will Google Classroom still be available for teacher use? As far as I know, yes, it's not going away, but I don't, you know, Tony, I'm going to let you answer that. Are they encouraged to still use it, or do we want them using Canvas?
All teachers should be using Canvas and not Google Classroom.
Okay. I don't think we have it restricted in any way, but I guess we could in theory.
For the parent video, was that in reference to this tool or the parent, the Securely parent portal?
I actually answered that vaguely on purpose because
Okay.
technically both is what I believe they're getting notified. Parent portal. Okay. I actually don't know if the parent portal message is going out at the same time. I would imagine it would.
I think they're two different.
Yeah, they're very
things.
different.
Like,
but
I mean, two different communications.
we've been waiting a while on the parent portal one, so I'd imagine they'd send them out at the same time.
But yeah, Securely, once we go live with the parent portal, Securely has an automated email that will go out to all parents, and it includes a bunch of information directly from Securely.
What will the parent portal show during the school day use? Will the parent portal show during the school day use or only after the teacher session ends? It will actually show the student browser history for all time, effectively. They'll be able to audit their students' browser history 24/7 and for, as far as I know, an indefinite length of time. So parents will actually be able to more easily assist with distance learning without having to sit and watch over their student's shoulder. And you might even be able to get some students to cooperate more if they know their parent can check their browser history. Yeah. All right, I'm going to assume that's the last of the questions, so I'm going to go ahead and call meeting adjourned unless someone else wants to add anything from the panelist group.
I would say just for anyone who did come in late, this is not available on iPads.
Oh yeah, we mentioned that, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, I just
Probably
we mentioned it at the beginning. I just want to reiterate.
All right, alrighty then. I guess meeting adjourned. Tony, do you want to go ahead and close this out?